we were at the Edinburgh Manor in Iowa, and they have a room upstairs where there's like a couple dolls just sitting there. 3 people from our group were in that room just talking. They made sure that one of the dolls was on it would have been the left side of the chair, and they knew exactly how they set him. And so they turned around and just were talking, trying to get EVPs real quick, and they turn around not even 2 minutes later, and the doll was on the opposite side of the chair with its arm propped up like it was listening to their stories. It was like, yeah, I like this. Yep, that doll moved at least 5 times with all of us in the room. It's really creepy doll too. There was also in that same manor, we were off to a room down that same hallway, and we were in there. We didn't really get much. We walked away, and all of a sudden we hear a scooting, and we walk back in there, and there's a chair that was sitting on the side of the room when we first were in there. It's now sitting in the center looking at the door.
I'm from the small town, and my husband and I were involved in a suicide and a drowning. We were the finders of both. And from then on, I've been getting different phone calls to see if I was okay.
From the other side?
Yeah. And all he would say is, "What are you doing?" No background sounds, unknown name, unknown number, pick it up, "Hey, what are you doing?" Before I started responding, nothing back, so I just hang up. But this has been going about 3 years. And my husband, whenever one of my kids is in trouble or things happen, I'll get the call, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I just respond back, "They're fine, I know where they are." And my husband's a skeptic. And we were laying there one night just after the suicide, because he's the one that found the young man. And he's like, "Well, why don't you just call me?" And then the phone rang. "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, he just slept with the lights on for quite a while.
That's amazing. And do you feel like it's protective, like a guardian?
I do, because we moved to North Dakota, changed our numbers just because. Well, I got another phone call. You move to North Dakota and you still get the calls when, you're feeling anxious or you're feeling that. And so we were in Minnesota, and we got in a bad part of the neighborhood, and we were getting ready to leave. And I was thinking, okay, do we leave? Well, I got the phone call, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, okay, I'm going, So I feel comforted by it, because we were real close with the gentleman, and then his daughter also. So I'm comfortable with it. My husband, not so much, but that's okay. That's what makes it even better.
My ghost story is basically since I was like little enough to like walk and talk and see things. Basically, I've had this buddy named Jim that lived underneath my bed all the time, and he was like an imaginary friend. My parents didn't think much of it until I've started. Sometimes I just wake up in the middle of the night and just sit in my room, just like not even going to sleep, and then have to come and put me to sleep. But there's been this case where I was like about 8 or 9 going into middle school. The door kind of creaked open slowly and slammed. The thing was loud. It shook the house. Everybody was awake. And then I'd never seen Jim again. Jim was gone. Jim was out of a basement. He was underneath the bed. He was gone.
So you said you moved around. Did you move around and Jim would still come with you?
He would. He would follow us in our cars.
Our next reunion, we moved from our hometown to Belport.
Yeah.
And he moved with us and stuck around for a little bit, and then he's been gone.
When I was 9 or 10, we lived in Nadawash, somewhere close by here. There was my door, and then my mom and dad's door right here, and then there was a hallway right here, so there was like a corner. And I sat in that corner, and I started crying, and I turned around, and there is a little boy. He was in the corner above my bed, and he had like blacked out spots where his hands and feet were, and he almost had alien-shaped eyes where they were kind of like teardrops, but they weren't big. And he kind of just sat there and looked at me, and I start crying. And my dad told me his door was cracked, and my dad told me to go back to my room, and I kind of walked toward him, and I backed back up, and I start crying, and then my mom and dad noticed that something was wrong. So my dad got up and yelled and told him to go away and that he wasn't allowed to be there. And then that night I just slept in my mom and dad's room for the rest of the time I lived there.
So when I was about 8 years old, sitting in front of the TV watching cartoons, and there was a knock on the side of the house, and my mom went running to the door saying, "Dad, Dad." She recognized the knock, but my grandfather was deceased for about 6 years. She recognized the knock. It wasn't on the door, it was on the side of the house, and that's what got me first thinking about what happens when we cross over, what happens when we die.
And you're part of an organization now?
I'm now part of 2 groups, MPRS, which is Minnesota Paranormal Research Society, and PCS, which is Paranormal Cooperative Services. And our mission is to raise the bar in investigating and bringing paranormal groups together, working cohesively to find the answers that we're all looking for.
My daughter was about 9 months old. We were living in an apartment in Buffalo, and she was just playing in the living room, and we had a center island kind of sink counter thing, no chairs or anything on it, and I had run to the bathroom, and when I'd come back from the bathroom, she was up in the sink with the water on, playing in bubbles, and I was like asking her simple questions, and she said that Grandpa put her there.
Mackinac Island, Michigan. Here I am with psychic for the first time, about 2002. Psychic for the first time. And psychic's like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm doing ghosts, so I can't really journey too much. So I went down, or went up to the old post cemetery at 1 in the morning. I got dizzy when I walked in. About 10 yards in front of me, I literally see this psychic cosplay. I see him filling up a guy who looks like he's in an old fisherman garb, long beard, top hat. I froze, so not badass at all. Totally froze. But my arm was cool, so I moved my arm like this, and he goes, "Aaron, there's something right in front of me." I was like, "Dude, it's right in front of me." Yeah. And at that time, he moved up and looked at me, and his body looked like a hollow, glass mold human, moving black smoke in it, and moved like a flip book animation. So, Minister Lady saw that as well. Had a moment of enlightenment, guys, that's what it's called. She ran out of the cemetery. The entity faded in front of my eyes. Both him and I said he's gone at the same exact time. After and my mind just melted. I was monsters exist.
When my husband and I first started dating, it was like the second or third time I'd spent the night at his house. We had an old farmhouse, and I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and when I went back to the bedroom, there was an old guy in bib overalls standing in the stairwell. Yep. So I jumped in the bed, and I looked at him, and as I'm laying there, 2 thoughts are going through my mind. When I tell him I saw this, he's going to think this girl is bat crap crazy and we're done, or he's going to be cool with it. And so I told him, and he's like, "Oh, thank God, I thought I was losing my mind. I'm seeing things everywhere." Shortly after that, we moved in together, and it got worse. We were laying in bed talking one night, and we were looking eye to eye, and next thing I know, I'm looking at his belly button. Someone grabbed me by the foot and pulled me down the bed. Yep. Couple weeks later, we were out in the yard doing some yard work, and I was showing him how to drive the Bobcat, and someone pushed me. Then we had a coven of witches come out and do a cleansing and take the nasty spirit away. So he went away, but there's at least 2 other ghosts in the house that we're aware of. It originally was a 300-acre farmstead, and the last residents of the farmstead were 2 brothers and a sister that all lived in the house together, never married, never left. So we're pretty sure he was the oldest brother, and then the sister is there. We call her Agnes. I don't know what her name is. Agnes is more, she's very interested in what's going on. She likes to stand in the upstairs window and watch you when you're in the yard. When I worked overnight, she had a very hard time with me sleeping during the day, so she'd bang doors, turn up the heat. We had a conversation, and I told her that I have to sleep during the day because I work at night, and then she seemed to leave me alone. And then there's a little girl for sure. Not sure where she came from. She likes to cause she runs up and down the stairs at night. She plays with the light switches. She likes to watch cartoons. So if you're sitting on the couch watching TV, she'll sit next to you, and if it's summer, you'll be 70 degrees on one side and have goosebumps on the other.
I was about 2 years old. I was laughing, giggling upstairs, playing by myself. My mom comes upstairs, checks on me, and asks me what I'm doing. I say Papa's home. I've never seen my grandfather before because he passed away before my time. I pointed him out in a picture. Exactly. So my mom calls her mom and confirms it and everything, and it's like, yeah, he saw him.
When I was down in Chicago Chicago Ghost Con with Ursula Bielski in 2011, I did the ghost tour that they were doing. It wasn't Ursula on the bus, it was one of her associates. And we'd been on the bus for a while. We stopped at the Hull House. And so we were sitting on the bus, and the gal was telling me about, the history of the Hull House and everything, the double baby and all that stuff. And I started feeling a little queasy when she started talking about her past guests, feeling like, because there's so much energy there, that she felt like people were starting to get sick. Like some people were physically getting sick on the sidewalk when they got off the bus. And so at that point, I started feeling sick. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe, power suggestion or something like that. And then I thought, well, we've been on the bus for a while. It had been raining. And so I thought, well, maybe the air on the bus is bad. So if I get off the bus and walk around, then I'll feel better getting fresh air. So I'm walking around. I'm still not feeling very well. And this was like the only time on the tour that this happened. And so I'm walking around and taking pictures and stuff, and then I go to the front of the house, and there's like a few steps that go up to the front of the house, and my ex-husband was with me at the time, and he had his hand on my back, kind of like guiding me up the stairs, and there was a handrail there, and all of a sudden I felt two hands on my chest kind of push me back a little bit, as if they didn't want me at the front of the house, so I had to grab the hand railing, and I'm like, there is something about the front of this house that something doesn't want me up here. So then he took my camera because he knew I wanted a picture of the staircase. When he took a picture, he caught a full apparition on the staircase, but it was really hard to see because the camera I had wasn't that great. So I had to kind of enhance it a little bit, like zoom in a little bit. But that was like the freakiest thing that has ever happened to me. And at that time, I was just getting into the paranormal, so I was kind of on the fence. And I had a friend before I went to Chicago who's kind of a sensitive that told me that something was going to happen to me on that tour that was going to make me a full-blown believer.
We did an investigation up in Maplewood Park, and we got a native calling, and we also saw, I was in one of the shelters, and we were having like a picnic type thing so we can rev up the area, and all of a sudden image or something came at me and rushed me. And at first I thought it was my nieces, and I asked her, were you behind me, sweetheart? And she's like, no, Auntie, I wasn't behind you. And then later we did the investigation. We shut down the park. We locked it all up. And we did it on a full moon as well. We did an eclipse. Wasn't it an eclipse?
Blood moon.
Blood moon. It was the blood moon, actually, last year. Was it last? 2 years ago. So anyways, after that had happened, you can't get lost in the park, okay? We already knew how to try, it's not impossible. It's not that huge, and it was just, but for some odd reason, once the moon started coming out, we got lost. I was trying to get to my investigators because they kept telling me that they kept seeing things, and so I was trying to get to my investigators. We get lost. So then what was the other experience? So the chanting comes up, okay? All of a sudden we hear this weird chanting, and we were in one of the shelters, and the investigators were all outside, and we can hear it like loud, and I'm like, what's going on? Because you can see my investigators, they were all in a ball, like getting away from it, and it's because it's coming towards them, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? So I went and broke it up, and I said, what is this? I mean, they're like, all of a sudden you hear this like real crazy calling, chanting thing, or I don't know what you would call it. And I'm like, I didn't know what to say, but I said, stop. We're not here to hurt anybody. We're here, we come in peace. And I didn't know what to say, but I had to say something. Yeah, and all of a sudden, it just dissipates.
I lost my husband last August, a year ago. And a few days after his funeral, his memorial, my smoke detectors went off. And they were going off at different times. My smoke detectors are wired to my electricity. So we shut the breaker off. They continued to go off. We took the batteries out. They continued to go off. We took them off the wall, unwired them, put them on the table. They continued to go off. My electrician left. And I said, all right, Don, I know you're here. They all stopped. And he's been around ever since. He lets me know when he's okay or if I've done something that pisses him off.